Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Inka Orko and I come from VTT Technical Research Center of Finland. We are the biggest R&D organization in Northern Europe. We have about 2,000, a little bit more than 2,000 researchers. And personally, I come from the area of natural resources. And in that area, we have about 550 researchers. I am not a research person anymore. I am business development manager in the area of process chemistry, environmental engineering. Today I'm going to talk about a novel concept that we have named resource container. The idea is to take products out from wastewater components. I'm sure that all of you are even more familiar than myself on municipal wastewater treatment. This is how we see the world. So we are thinking that the wastewater treatment at the moment is much controlled and guided by environmental legislation and permits. Most of the plants are owned by communities or community partnerships. And of course, their given goal is to reach a certain and the given goal, of course, is to meet the permit requirements. So to separate the nutrients, to get rid of the solids, the microbes, and other harmful substances to meet the permit conditions. And of course, we want to do this with minimum cost. Everybody knows that the communities and cities are under tremendous pressure at the moment financially, so it is very understandable that they have very little incentive and minimal funding to develop anything else or to develop the system from a totally different point of view. Further, what's wrong with this whole system? We are already reaching really high efficiencies in wastewater treatment. The effluents are very clean, and I think as Finns we can be very proud of what we are doing. However, the plants are very large and they are long-term investments. They are very costly to invest. There's nutrients and carbon leakage from these facilities. The system is usually based on biology. There's an activated sludge treatment which may not be all that flexible towards fluctuations in the intake. And of course, the basic ideology comes much from the 70s. And nothing wrong with the 70s, good time, but still, I think there may be some room for thinking things differently. And of course, I think I'm referring now to what Bruce Orek said earlier, incremental improvement. I think we've been doing incremental improvement in these municipal wastewater treatment methods. So we are thinking maybe we should rethink this whole thing all over again. On the right-hand side, you will see the waste management hierarchy. Maybe some of you even drew it, I don't know, but you know that very well. So the idea is, of course, to get from the paradigm of design for disposal through to avoiding altogether. And yesterday we had a good speech about the urine, and that would be a good example of avoidance. However, as we are people, and as things don't change as quickly as we would like them to, we are thinking that we may need to take a few steps to get to the very top ladder, the avoidance ladder. So we are thinking, instead of today's paradigm, which is the treatment and disposal, can we take another step and land on the recycle step before we're at the avoidance part? And all this we of course want to do so that we can save energy, save material, maybe take some material out of the wastewater, and also contribute minimum amount to the CO2 emissions. I'm not going to touch on the legislation anymore. I think we've had some really excellent speeches about that already today and yesterday, but there may be some measures that we need to carry out there as well in order to get this thing done. And at the end, I think we're missing out on some really good business opportunities. There's a lot of SMEs with great ideas and great technologies out there, and I think this new thinking may give them an opportunity to get into business. Then I'm moving on to the VTT concept. We have designed a new approach to meet the demands that I was just presenting in the previous slide. We're thinking, can we maybe take the recycle step also in the wastewater treatment? We have put together two options. I'm not presenting them here in detail. This is just a very rough sketch, and including all the steps that we are planning to include, but not in that much detail. As first, we have the wastewater coming in to the filtration unit. There are some tricks that we plan to do there. We have a couple of technologies at VTT developed that we plan to try out, but also we are now inviting SMEs especially, and other companies as well, to present their ideas and their ready technologies so that we can integrate. So the idea behind this whole concept is to integrate existing and new technologies into this concept to get to the recycling. Secondly, we have if you go down from the filtration unit, you see at the bottom the carbon capture. So there we have a couple of thermal treatment technologies that we plan to try out. And if you move on to the right from the filtration unit, you have the phosphorus and the nitrogen and also other impurities capture units. So the idea is that we are going to treat wastewater not as something that we need to clean up, but as something that acts as a raw material source for us. So we want to take specifically, selectively, things out in the order where we need to get them out in the form that will be suitable for reprocessing and productization. And then at the end we have the water polishing unit, which at the moment we are thinking is conventional technology. Of course, the fancy dream is that we could get drinking water out of here if we do this properly. Our initiative is at a phase where we have these things drawn on paper. We have tried out the different methods in the lab, but as separate units. So it's not that we have not put the concept together yet. So this is what we want to do. We want to integrate these different bits and parts into a total concept, which is based on chemistry. And then we want to try it out in the lab with real solutions from the previous stage. We are going to model the concept and do some rough techno-economical calculations and pre-feasibility studies. And the thing why I'm here today is that I'd like to invite you, if you have a great technology or if you have a great idea, or if you want to be part of this integrated concept, if you think you can help us in reaching this, then please come and talk to me afterwards. The second phase, we have already planned that out, provided everything works out. We want them to this year. Then next year we are planning to get this funding through pilot funding. So we are going to scale this up. And when I say scale up, I'm thinking of the container scale. So I don't think if I mentioned earlier, but the idea, of course, I understand it's a challenge, first of all, to take the nutrients out. And the second challenge, I'm sure, is that we get it scaled right. So we are thinking the new business opportunities for the SMEs may open up, for example, through productizing the integrated concept so that we can pack it in a container and take it to the source. And it may be a seasonal source, it may be a holiday village, or it may be a seasonal sugar harvest and you want to put some extra capacity on your plant. So this is our ambitious goal at the very end. So with the initiative, we'd like to demonstrate that yes, we can take all the nutrients out and we can take the carbon out and we can make products out of that. We will demonstrate that. We will see what the related cost and also what the potential revenue streams might be. We will have initiated collaboration with relevant partners and stakeholders in this. And also we hope to involve companies early on, already now, so that we will create actual business opportunities and also reflect their view of the market. And of course, the final target, as I think everybody here agrees for all of us, is to reach resource efficiency and of course lowered emissions to the Baltic Sea. This is a picture of what we've been doing. So VTT has been very active in process water treatments. And we are inviting anybody who feels like you can tie into this concept and into our capabilities and provide something new to come forward later on. And I'm ending up here with the very last final words, not by me, but somebody much wiser than me. And I'm now saying, or they are now saying that there is business and that it will be there in the future. So come and talk to me, and thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Inka. Can you hear me? Yes. Any questions for Inka? Okay, you can come and talk to Inka and probably get her card if you want to be in touch with her later. But thank you. We will continue with a little bit different story. This is Director Marjukka Porvari from Jon Nurminen Foundation, and she will tell about this voluntary nutrient trading for the Baltic Sea.
Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're still somewhat awake after the sugar boost we got during the last coffee break. So thanks for this opportunity to come here and tell you about the nutrient trading initiative we are launching. Our ambitious plan is to launch the first nutrient trading scheme in Europe, in the Baltic Sea region and in Europe. You know that these types of policy instruments have been tried in the United States, in New Zealand, in countries like not in Europe before. So we are really trying to do something very new. Few words about the foundation, not much because most of you know us very well here in Finland. So maybe I will just conclude that we have always, Bruce Orrick was talking about scale. He was talking about sort of exponentiality. So we have always focused on scale, and that's why we have been working a lot with point sources, and especially in municipal wastewater treatment. So all these issues of nutrient recovery from, say, waste to the sludge have become very familiar to us during these last 10 years of our work. Yes, so why nutrient trading? Why such a new, difficult concept? What is driving this idea? The idea has been discussed in these Baltic Sea regions already for 10 years. And I see Karl-Johan Lehtinen in the audience, who is one of the guilty persons for this because NEFCO actually made a report already in 2008, which was focusing on these issues. And why it is so important is that we can already now see that if we want to save the Baltic Sea, we have to look across borders. For example, somebody has calculated that if Sweden would like to reduce the amount of phosphorus that they have to do for the Baltic Sea Action Plan targets, they would need to end all agriculture south from Skåne. So you can see that these are things that are really not possible to do. And there's very high variability of abatement costs in this region. It means that you can get a lot more efficiency, you can get a lot more for your money if you target your money wisely. To get you know, with the same money you get a much larger effects on decreasing nutrient discharges if you target it wisely. So NEFCO also, already in 2008, this is copied from your report, made a plan how to do all these great things. And now many feel that in 10 years nothing has happened really. So this is also why we took the initiative to develop this idea further. But if we think in practice, maybe something has already happened. Because what happened when our foundation was actually started when we started our environmental activities in 2005, was based on the very same idea. This figure represents the abatement costs for reducing nutrients, reducing phosphorus to the Baltic Sea in different countries. And the first is Finnish national measures. The next is nitrogen removal in our wastewater treatment plants. And all of the other measures are measures taken in St. Petersburg, Russia. So here you can really see what we mean by efficiency gains. And what we chose to do, together with the support of Finnish private people, Finnish companies, and also Finnish public authorities, was the one which is pointed with the red circle. So, and the reason was very simple. Why Finnish people and Finnish companies and the Ministry of the Environment wanted to support this project? Because the environmental effect that we could get, the benefit that we could get for our own citizens here in Finland was so huge. So in a way, what we were doing already then, and what we have been doing when we have been, our ministry, for example, has been supporting water protection measures in St. Petersburg is exactly this. No, we were not obliged to do it. We couldn't get any reductions to our HELCOM quotas because of this, but it was worth doing, because already now we can see the improved water quality in the Gulf of Finland. We can see the results already now. And this is sort of what we have already done, but now we can still, and are still doing it. And now this leads us into this, like, talking about voluntary and compliance-based nutrient trading. Because when we talk about voluntary nutrient trading, we come out from a very sort of central principle of environmental protection, which is polluter pays principle. So why are we coming out from this principle? Why are we looking from a different perspective? And if we think of Belarus, it's a very clear case. So we have a country which is located so that 50% of the country is in the Baltic Sea drainage area. However, this country itself doesn't have any coastline. They cannot enjoy the Baltic Sea. They are one of the poorest countries in this region. And also, they have no legal obligations due to the European Union or HELCOM, because they are not a HELCOM member. They don't have any reason to remove phosphorus from their wastewaters efficiently. And the benefits come to our people, the people in Finland and Sweden, the richest people in the whole region. So that there is one good point of view why we should be doing these things. And here is just an example about emissions trading, about these compliance-based schemes and voluntary schemes. And what we are doing with the climate policy, you know, we have the European Union emissions trading system. We have also these flexible mechanisms which enable you or the countries to do these measures in other countries. And also we have in water policy, we have some of these water quality trading schemes which are all from outside Europe. So, and still what is also another point of view is sort of in addition to this just being nice and being voluntary, we can also offset our own nutrient discharges. And now that we are launching this nutrient trading initiative, for example, some of the Finnish municipalities have been interested in neutralizing their own nutrient discharges from, say, from their wastewater treatment plants. So one of the forerunners, we hope, will be Helsinki, and they want to neutralize their discharges from the Viikinmäki wastewater treatment plant by supporting water protection actions in Belarus. So what we are creating in the project is a platform, a place where all this action can take place, where these institutions that have a project or initiative that concretely and in a tangible way really reduces nutrients, they can offer it to the platform, and then the financiers can find these projects which they would like to finance, either to become nutrient neutral or just to be voluntary and be exemplary and nice. So what we aim at is increasing efficiency of Baltic Sea protection efforts, We also want to bring additional resources to water protection. It has been traditionally financed by the public sector, and we know now, as of today, what is the state of public finances in the whole Europe. We really need all the finances that we can get. We also want to foster new water protection innovations. We want to create a systematic mechanisms where we can really find these new ideas for nutrient reducing measures, and in a way this like nutrient reduction slush type of action are happening. We also want to support local and Baltic Sea region-wide water protection initiatives which aim at tangible nutrient reduction, whether this is our own project or anybody's project. Any project with tangible, concrete results can become a part of this platform. So in the project we have pilots. We have certain pilot actions where we are sort of implementing these ideas, and these pictures stand for the pilots. So there we have one of the pilot actions is gypsum application to fields in the archipelago sea drainage area, and it's called the SAVE project. It's also financed from the kärkihankkeen rahoitus by the Finnish government, and there we aim to test whether we can significantly reduce phosphorus leakages from fields to the Baltic Sea. One of the actions is that the wastewater treatment action, improving wastewater treatment in countries like Belarus. One of the actions is actually growing mussels. This will be in Sweden because in Finland we have too low salinity for this action. So there mussel farmers will produce mussels, and these can then be used for either fertilizing or animal feed. And then we also have our local fish project here in Finland, where we fish a sort of undervalued fish like roach and bream and bring it for human consumption. And we try to commercialize this production chain, and it looks really good now. For example, there is one roach product which is called järkisärki, which is now proposed to become the food of the year here in Finland. So there is this big sort of people are very interested on these things, such as nyhtökaura also shows. And also there is one, it's not shown here, but there's one beautiful industrial symbiosis here, which is using these biogas rejects for enhancing wastewater processes of the pulp and paper industry. So this is also, we are trying to find these matches in this project where somebody is willing to take the excess nutrients and utilize them in a useful way. And this is about the pilots and the platform, but we also are aiming at developing environmental policy here in Europe. So we want to include the lessons learned from the existing water quality training schemes. This is outside of Europe. And we also want to learn from the flexible instruments in climate policy. We also will analyze possibilities for applying these nutrient trading instruments in governmental policy. So now we are moving from voluntary to compliance-based here, to polluter-based things. And we have some current examples. People often don't believe in these things, that they say that this is an utopia, that you can't have really nutrient trading. But already in Sweden, they are trying this CSAR system, where municipal wastewater treatment plants can trade nitrogen quotas between each other. And here in Finland, the government is considering this system where additional nutrient discharges due to fish farming could be compensated by fishing Baltic herring, which is then again used for fish feed in the Kasnes fish factory. So although our project is not sort of directly aimed at nutrient recycling, for example, this mussel farming and fishing component really show you that it's not only agriculture and wastewater treatment. You can also recycle nutrients yet in another way. We also will produce a roadmap for using flexible mechanisms in the Baltic Sea region. So we also invite everybody to participate because this project has just started. It will now go on for 3 years. So we invite all project developers. I mean, if you have ideas how you could reduce in a concrete way which you can really prove then, in fact, that it has happened. Nutrients from the Baltic Sea and watercourses, you can become a partner. We also invite, say, these financiers, institutions interested in investing in these things, becoming nutrient neutral, or just participating financially in becoming partners. We also invite the research community to participate in this policy development. Also, the technology and service providers can share their information and best practices on the issues that we are dealing with. Yeah, so we are really looking forward to everybody to contribute, and you will hear more about us in the coming 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Marjukka. Are there any questions for Marjukka? Can't see any. Oh, there.
If you take a project or develop a project like managing the nutrients in Leningrad Oblast, and this costs 50 million, so how would this be offset with your trading scheme?
Well, if you have a project and which reduces nutrients by amount X, and you can then also certify this reduction, then there is basically no problem. Of course, gathering 50 million might be somewhat difficult, so maybe we are looking for a bit smaller scale. Yeah, but still, as long as you have a tangible nutrient reduction which you can certify, which you can prove, it's fine. And as long as there are no other harmful environmental consequences, that's of course also an important one. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Marjukka. Phosphogreen and clear green phosphorus recovery processes. I will invite Senior Process Specialist Peter Balslev, Suez Environment, Denmark. Welcome.
Yes, first of all, thank you for inviting me and giving the opportunity for me to present some examples of experience and success stories. The title was phosphor green and clear green, but I think I will concentrate on the phosphor green because that's the resource recovery part of this. My agenda for here is first a presentation and then a background of the problem and the solution for this subject. And also a little speak about a partnership which was formed to solve this problem, and some cases from Aarhus and Herning in Denmark, which are the examples. All of all, it's part of, but maybe a small brick, but a part of the circular economy. My name is Peter Balslev. I'm a wastewater specialist, and I have connections to Aarhus Water and Suez Water, so I have a dual employment, but this shows to be a good idea in this case. To start with the problems, which were actually what we started with for more than 5 years ago in Aarhus Water. This is an example of scaling problems. Also in the digester we saw struvite crystals forming on the sidewalls, and what we thought was sand inside the digester was actually also struvite, a mineral that contains a lot of phosphorus. This is what we saw as a problem, and which solutions could be found to this kind of problem. It gave a lot of problem to the operation of the sewage treatment plant. So at this point there was no discussion of nutrient recovery. This is another point that we could see the problems in a pump and a valve. This is a very simple mass balance of the Åby wastewater treatment plant in Aarhus, focused on the phosphorus. all numbers here are percentage of the incoming phosphorus. And we have, at this time, about, of course, 100% in the inlet. And through the treatment process, only a small part, which were the allowed amount in the outlet, 4%. All the rest of the phosphorus must end up in the sludge. And this is how it works. But as you can also see, oh, sorry, I'll have to focus on this specific number, because that's the internal load of the phosphorus. From the final dewatering of the sludge, a lot of phosphorus is actually returning to the water process. And this gives a lot of problems, of course, to the water treatment plant process itself, but also inside the sludge treatment. And this is where you saw these scalings that you saw from the beginning. But yes, a solution was needed for this. And what we found was, through a 3-step upscaling, starting, actually there was a step before this, which was literature study. What did other people do on this? And we could see that maybe a lab testing was the way through, and microscope, and we can see all these crystals forming in lab scale. We used pilot testing and decided from these results to make a full-scale testing. And whenever this full-scale plant was installed on this same wastewater treatment plant, now we can see that the return of phosphate is now not 40% but 10%, and a part of the phosphate is coming out here as a product of the phosphogreen process. Of course, it reduces the phosphate some other where, and this comes from the sludge. So it's not 96% of the phosphate going to the sludge, but only maybe 60%. And we could measure this as the content of phosphorus going from 4% down to below 3%. An important way to get through all these solutions and technical decisions was that we needed to provide a full value chain for the P recovery. It's not a solution just to take out the phosphate and store it in another way. We needed to have end user included, and that's why we included agriculture advisor company called Seges in Denmark. They knew how fertilizer should be used, what are the needs for the farmers, and they could tell us what's needed for this product early in the process. Those included in the development of the process was Norconsult as a consultant company. That was where I was employed at that time. Grundfos the pump delivered, and Stjernholm the machinery shop that built the plant. Those who were facing a challenge was 3 different water companies that were all very interested to get a solution for this. So back in 2010, the problem started, and a partnership worked on this solution through this period. The technical part of it, I won't spend much time on this, but just showing you this flow scheme. We have a reject water, that's the internal load, an internal stream at the wastewater treatment. That's the raw material for the process, coming through a reactor in an upflow system. It's called a fluid bed with recirculation. And whenever we produce enough of the product called struvite, it's harvested from the bottom and drained and dried and packed in big bags in this case. So from the beginning it was also important to have a good economy. this should not only be a green product, it should also be something that could pay for the operation. At the Herning water utility, they wanted a payback time which was less than 7 years before they wanted to start this at all. And just shortly, we can see here that the sales of the struvite product was actually less than what cost it to produce this material. You will have to look at the other savings, and these are substantial because we could save a lot of the precipitation chemicals, and we also saved a lot on the sludge treatment. And also the biogas production was actually increased by this process. So all in all, we had actually succeeded to have this return of investment. This resulted in this commercialization of the process. Phosphor Green, that's the process, and Phosphor Care is the product, it's called, and it's trademarked both. In Denmark, we use Stjernholm as a producer, and abroad, Suez, that's where I came from. We market this process as Phosphor Green. And the end user, that's a fertilizer company in Denmark. They actually produce a Luxus fertilizer, and they use this struvite directly as a mixture in this fertilizer and sell it for private householdings. There's a lot of steps before we can do this. There's been agricultural tests. That's not a part of our project, but a parallel development from universities in Denmark. A lot of farming tests, and in this way we knew how the product should be produced to have a high value for the end users. And there was also a question about how to change a product from a wastewater into a fertilizer, because from the beginning and by definition it's a waste. So the Danish Ministry of Agriculture and the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, was included in this, and they gave the approval for struvite produced in Denmark. It's a fertilizer. And we also joined the registration at REACH. That's Berliner Wasserbetriebe has done a lot of work on this, and we can buy a part of this REACH registration. So now it's been sold through this Kongerslev Kalk. Other fertilizer companies are of course also possible, but this is the case at the moment. And Aarhus Water and Herning Water, which are the two that has such a plant, is open for new water companies to join the sales group. And also Suez is actually working on how can we make a benefit of this Danish approval to transport struvite produced in France to Denmark, because we are actually some years ahead of France in this consent. Of course, an important issue to make a high value to struvite is that no heavy metals is included in this product. And compared to the sludge at the same plant which it is produced in, we see we have some heavy metals, but not too many, and we are still below the national limits of land application of the sludge. So even though that we take out the phosphorus, the sludge is still possible to take out for land application. So this is, yes, just shortly. We have the sludge, anaerobic digestion, and the dewatering producing sludge water, and this is the raw material for the process. The water goes back to the headworks, and the product goes to struvite. Some pictures. This is the plant in Herning. So just shortly, part of the reactor at the bottom, you see some pumps for recirculation. And this is part of the harvesting system. It's in Aarhus, screening to separate the material from the water, and then this is beginning of the drying part. So this, I don't know if you have been through and seen our standouts here, but we have a small sample of the struvite. This is how it looks when it comes directly out of the plant. And it's placed in big bags. The summary of this is that it's an innovative and effective react water treatment solution. It can be combined with an Anamox treatment. I haven't told you about this, but that's the part that takes out the nitrogen from the same internal stream. For the water company, you can actually get a green image because you have a higher degree of phosphorus recovery and reuse. And most important, it has a return of investment. Of course, there's a lot of value creation here. I won't go through this, but an important point is actually that the sludge that's left when you have this process is actually better balanced in NNP because there's a lot of phosphorus in the sludge. And when you reduce the phosphorus content, then this is actually better balanced. So we now have the full cycle, of course. We have learned a lot about if economy should be linear, exponential, or what and cyclic is actually part of this. As you can see, we have a production of the sewage going through a sewage treatment, separated to clean water and the nutrient, which produce fertilizer that can be used in farming and food production, and now we have the circle. So this is all I have. References, just again. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody? Questions? Yes, Inka. Could you bring the microphone?
Hi, Inka Orko from VTT. Just a quick question regarding the price of struvite. So have you done any calculations on what's the cost per kilo of struvite? I understand it may depend on the concentrations to some extent.
Yes, I can see. Well, I can say that it's sold at this moment for. Pierre, can you remember the price? It's yes, 300 euro per ton. That's the sales price, and as you can see, it does not cover all the costs, but you have savings in the plant that gives this price a good economy.
How about the cost?
The cost for struvite.
Yes.
But
taking out it.
Yes.
Phosphorus as struvite per kilo.
Yeah, it's 300 euro per ton.
Not the cost, but the price.
Yes, that's the price also. Yeah.
Okay, there was another question somewhere here. Yeah.
Here in Finland, the problem with struvite sort of recovery would be that we mostly use chemical precipitation, and if we don't use chemical precipitation, we would firstly increase phosphorus load going to the Baltic Sea. Then we would also increase bioavailability of the phosphorus going to the Baltic Sea. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, because phosphorus is so important for the sea, it's really difficult to think that we would leave this step. So how did you cope with this problem at your plants? Did your phosphorus levels increase in your effluents, and how did you manage this?
Yes, it's a good question. It did not influence the effluent for the first, because at the effluent, the treatment process in these treatment plants was a combined biological chemical treatment, and actually one of the important savings was that we could turn down the chemical treatment 1-to-1 because we take out the phosphorus in another way. So this internal load is not taken out by chemical treatment. So we have the biological phosphorus removal and we have also the chemical phosphorus removal. So the part that's chemically removed is just lowered, and we can contain the same or still have the same effluent quality. So if you have a plant that has a combined, then you can actually still have the same effluent quality. But if you have a plant that is 100% dependent on the chemical phosphorus removal, then the potential for this kind of recovery is not very big. It has to include some changes in the plant.
Okay, thank you. I would like to ask, when the struvite comes out of the process and you dry it, is it ready to be spread with the normal equipment on farms, or do you have to do something with it?
Depends on how the process is operated. At this point, it is possible to make small granules that is equal size as artificial fertilizer, which can be spread directly in a machine. But of course, if you run the process in another way, you'll produce smaller particles, and then it will need some granulation with other materials. So both is possible. It depends.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. And now we have the last presentation from Ludwig Hermann. He's a business development manager from Outotec, and Ludwig will tell about technology, which is helping to nutrient recycling from phosphate-rich waste flows.
Okay, thank you for having me here and giving me the opportunity to conclude this nice seminar today. So I will briefly guide you through who is Outotec, our motivation to engage in nutrient management activities, and the debugger project that is the subject of this presentation of today. Here you can see the latest achievement to the right. This is this Zurich incineration plant that you have already seen today in Anders' presentation. So who is Outotec? Outotec has about 5,000 employees and sales of about 1.2 billion euro. And important, it is a technology company, so it has a lot of patents, it invests a lot in R&D, and it is already repeatedly named as last year it was the third most sustainable company of all companies that are registered on stock exchange. We have a really large scientific network for our R&D activities, and we are conscious of our, let's say, global problems, and that take this as an example that we are overusing the resources of our planet. So this is what motivates us. So we have already engaged in, of course, efficiency improvement. A lot of efficiency improvement we are doing with regard to minerals and metals processing, energy efficiency and recovery efficiency of the materials, and we are engaged in phosphate recycling and several other activities. So we can recycle phosphates from ash mainly, and after the incineration of sludge and waste. And here you see two pictures just about the how water bodies in Europe are affected by eutrophication. So you see a lot of countries on this map, and you see a lot of coastlines that are really affected. It's not only the Baltic Sea in Europe, and the result can be this. So the solution is not to use the nutrients where we excrete them, humans and animals, but where plants need them. But how to get there? We have a slurry usually, and we need to process the slurry. And one, let's say, approach, one solution was developed with this so-called debugger project. It is an EIT, so European Institute of Technology, KIC InnoEnergy financed and Life Plus financed project. So I mentioned that we were already engaged in phosphate recovery from ashes, so we went upstream. Upstream we are doing incineration of sludge, and we could do incineration of slurries, but it is not practiced because of the price. And part of the barrier why we could not use more slurries for treatment and thermal conversion is the drying efficiency. This was the reason why we went, or we looked how we can improve the efficiency of drying. If you go further upstream, you see dewatering as one of the steps that is mechanically done and not extremely energy consuming. And then you have anaerobic digestion, that is for us the hub from where you can recover nitrogen, because you cannot recover nitrogen from ashes. They are not, it is not there anymore. And to the left you see the three big flows that we have, containing mainly phosphorus but also nitrogen, and containing a lot of water which needs drying, and this is why we invented this dryer. And we took as an example a dryer that was developed and built more than 10 years ago for drying wood pellets. And we have two such drying plants in Sweden. This one is Storuman, a 32 megawatt combined heat and power plant in Sweden. And we looked into the principle and asked ourselves, can we apply this principle for sludges and slurries? So if you look at drying, and I mentioned already, it is an energy consuming process. So normally per ton of water you consume about 800 to 1200 kilowatt hours of energy, whatever energy it is. And you lose most of it because the what you dry, you evaporate the water, and the evaporated water goes into the air. In the system that we have now adopted, you use this evaporated water and you produce vapor out of it. And you need vapor to produce vapor, but in the end you have vapor again from your dried materials. So the only difference is that the incoming vapor is of higher quality. You can see here steam 20 bar, and the outgoing vapor is of lower quality. It has only 5 bar, and it is, let's say, 160 degrees approximately in terms of temperature. And the only thing you lose from this dryer is your condensate that you have as an effluent. So knowing that this principle, or trying to prove that this principle will work for sludges and slurries, we had to build a pilot, and as you can see, a pilot of such a dryer is quite big. It's 30 meters high, has a footprint of 5 by 50 meters, and it can dry approximately 500 kilogram. Actually, it turned out that we can dry up to 1 ton per hour of slurries in this facility. And as I already mentioned, it is very energy efficient. It is a closed loop process, so it doesn't have gaseous emissions and therefore also no odor emissions. It has no need for gas cleaning stage. It has almost no mechanical components. Of course, there's pumps, and in the end there is a cyclone to take out the material. It's safe, it has a steam environment, and it can dry to very high dry matter levels. And if you have this dryer and you get the dry material, and actually we found out that you get a fluffy material out of it, you have a variety of options for further energy conversion. So you can, so in this project we tested so-called twin gasification. And twin gasification means you produce a very high quality product gas, synthetic gas, and again, we tested sewage sludge, cattle manure, and pig manure for that purpose. And what you can see on this slide is that here comparing wood pellets and sewage sludge. Sewage sludge is the worst material in this range. Manure is better than sewage sludge in terms of heat value. So you can see you get very similar gas composition, and you get, if you work at higher temperatures, in this case 810 degrees, you get also a yield that is very close to gasification of wood pellets. And this is an example of a different gasifier type, but it shows that you can combine the so-called co-incineration, in this case in a cement plant, with nutrient recovery. Normally, if you would burn your sludge in a cement plant, you would lose all your nutrients to the cement. But if you put a gasifier in front of the cement kiln, you give the cement kiln the heat as before, and you can take out the ash for nutrient recovery, and you can combine the energy and the nutrient efficiency. You can combine both solutions in one facility for a lower cost than if you build for the whole amount of sludge that is currently burned in cement kilns, like 50% approximately in Germany, and in Switzerland a similar level. You could also replace only the energy conversion system. And this is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ludwig. Do we have any questions there on the back?
Karl-Johan Lehtinen from Nefco. Did I understand you correctly that you were able to split water to hydrogen and oxygen in some of your technologies?
Of course, the gasification process allows for several options. We did not yet do that because, of course, the purification of the syngas that you produce from sewage sludge is even more complicated than the purification of wood pellet or sawdust gas. So we did not yet do it because we don't believe it can be a short-term solution. But what is a short-term solution is that you combust this gas directly in a municipal solid waste incinerator or in a cement kiln or in whatever plant where you just take the energy and of course the heat also from this gas, and you immediately combust it for heating another process.
But in a future beautiful world it would be possible.
This purification is a beautiful work. Yeah, this is a task for the next 10 years probably.
There's another comment there.
Ludwig, just for the sake of clarity, what happens with nitrogen and carbon in the debugger?
Well, of course, nitrogen and carbon is gone. So carbon is used for conversion to energy, and nitrogen is what is in the sludge. What is left in the sludge is just blown to the air. So this is why we recommend, and if you take the whole balance of this process, you can approximately yield 50% of the energy content in the anaerobic digester, but not more. But 50% goes out, and you can combine the anaerobic digester as several companies have already shown and demonstrated here in Finland, that you can extract nitrogen more than 50%, but let's say 50% for sure, and you reduce the load of nitrogen, which is a benefit for the further downstream conversion. And of course, the carbon is not there anymore if you take it for energy conversion.
Ludwig, just for sake of clarity, if you leave the gasification out,
yeah,
just use the debugger. What happens with nitrogen? And
okay, if you just dry, you keep also nitrogen and you keep carbon. And thank you for this advice. We have a tool where we can also have a transportable organic material that is dry and free of organic, or let's say not completely free of organic pollutants, but for sure free of pathogens, because pathogens will die at the temperature of 180 degrees.
Okay, one more question there.
This is maybe beside a little bit of the point of your presentation, because we had just in the coffee pause a very intensive discussion about we have to do important decisions what to do with the ash. We produce a lot of ash, and now one option is to put it as a material for making the roads. And I was saying, but it has so much valuable nutrients there that can we not have a process where we get the phosphorus out and leave the dangerous heavy metals? So can you just shortly explain, is that possible, how feasible is it, and should we consider it seriously?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. So we have, in principle, we have two pathways for producing fertilizers out of ash. We have a hydrochemical and we have a pyrochemical way. Autotech went the pyrochemical way, and we take the hot ashes after the combustion or gasification or whatever you are doing, and add additives. In the last development stage, we add sodium sulfate. So we add sulfate, that is a secondary nutrient, and we change the phosphorus phases in the product to a sodium calcium phosphate. And this sodium calcium phosphate is a plant available form of phosphate, and this has been proven for about 100 years, because we used in the whole 20th century, we used such fertilizers. They were produced regularly, but in the end, as they are thermally produced fertilizers, they lost against the sulfuric acid based fertilizers in terms of competitiveness. So these plants disappeared from the European landscape. Some of them exist still in some countries across the world. The major effect of this process is to, let's say, solubilize the phosphates and make them plant available. The second effect of it is you run it under a certain atmosphere, so under depleted oxygen atmosphere, and the result is that you can remove metals, and you remove particularly the, let's say, most inconvenient metals, cadmium, arsenic, and lead. With this mild treatment, you don't remove zinc and copper. But of course, zinc and copper can also be considered as secondary or as micronutrients. But let's say the elements without agronomic value, lead, cadmium and arsenic, they are taken out by this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ludwig.
Thank you.
And thank you for you all that you have had the patience to stay here this long. I'm going to say a few words. I'm not going to be too long. But first of all, of course, I would like to thank all our speakers for very interesting and inspiring presentations. Today we've had quite a lot of expertise in this room, and when I've been listening to the people and on the coffee breaks and the people who are giving the presentations, there's quite a lot of excitement and enthusiasm in the speech. So I kind of had I had this feeling, as the President Halonen said, that that we haven't only been using our heads, that we also been using our hearts when we are trying to enhance this nutrient recycling. It's very, very exciting. A lot has been done in Europe in circular economy and nutrient recycling, and I think there is a growing understanding of the need of the systemic change. And this creates an opportunity, and I think we have to act now. Listening to Bruce Orrick it's very clear that we are in a hurry. We heard about few presentations about legislation from EU level and the EU different member states, and the change of legislation can lead to an implementation of new innovative systems and technologies, and I think we need the right amount of stick and carrot. And what makes me extremely excited is that today we have heard quite many stories and cases where actually the firms and farms are doing nutrient recycling in practice and using these business opportunities. And in the end, I would like to thank all our organizing team, and especially Noora Mantere. I don't know if Noora is present here. Noora has done a lot of work to put all this together, so thank you very much, Noora. And thank you for you all, and I really hope you have a safe journey home. Let's keep in touch, and remember to break the patterns.